Hello, I'm 8mm Mauser Man. This is going to be a video on A1, A2, and A4 or detachable charging handles. A few quick disclaimers before we get in. One, I just got this rifle. It's a police trade-in rifle, so if you think it's set up in a stupid way, they just got it and this is the way it came. I'm going to shoot it like this and do a video on it like this, and then after that I might make some changes in the future. It also still has the officer's name on this label on it, so that's pretty cool. Also, I didn't feel like taking an optic off of a flat top upper and then replacing that flat top upper with this carry handle just to need to re-zero that optic after. So the detachable carry handle is just going to be detached. You probably know what flat top uppers look like. All right, with those two things out of the way, let's actually get into this video. And we're going to go from oldest to newest. So first, we need to talk about the M16A1 carry handle and the sight and how it works. Now, this carry handle has two settings. It has a long range setting, which is this one right here, and then a short range setting with that flipped up like that. We're going to talk about that in just a second. And then if you need to adjust the zero, you use a bullet and you press in this button right here, and then you rotate it. So that is to the left, and then I'll do it again. That is to the right. With all three of these, for adjusting your zero for the elevation, you actually work with the front sight instead of the rear sight. You can adjust the rear sights on these, but that is for bullet drop compensation. You adjust the front sight to adjust the actual elevation when you're zeroing the gun. Now, the biggest advantages of the M16A1 carry handle is, one, that it is stupid simple. There are two controls that you can have. The second advantage is the side effect of that. There are really no snag points on this carry handle. I guess you could say this adjustment right here, but I don't think anything's really going to get snagged on there. However, there are some disadvantages with the A1 carry handle as well. The first is that there's not much bullet drop compensation. Right here, you should be able to see an L on the back of the rear aperture. That is the long range aperture, and then that is the close range aperture. Now you can see that both of these apertures are small. That's one of the downsides of this, is that most M16A1s had two small apertures. Now you can do two things with the bullet drop compensation. The first is to take the long range aperture and zero it in at 25 and 300 yards. When you do that, then you can flip up the short range aperture, and that will be good for 50 to 200 yards. This will get you more on when you're in between that 25 yards to 300 yard range. And that is the way that some military men were told to set up their M16A1s. However, your other option is to have that short range aperture for between 25 and 250 yards. Then you would pull out the long range aperture for 300 to 460 yards. Both of these were used in the military, and both of them are correct. The issue here, though, is that you really only have one click back and forth. That is two settings for your bullet drop compensation, and that's not very much. That other issue, like I already said, is that there's only small apertures. Okay, next let's talk about the A2 sights, which are slightly more complicated. This one is on a carbine, but the upper is the same whether it's on a carbine or a full 20-inch rifle. The way that you set the zero on this one is that you have this knob right here, and you adjust it this way for left and this way for right. Turning that knob spins this little screw right here, and that will send the sight in a different direction. The BDC has more settings too. Right here you will see a 3 and an 8. So within 300 yards, you're going to use this, this setting right here. Then as I spin it, you will get to 4, 5, 6, 7, and then all the way at the end is 8 like that. So the 3 is at the close range, and then the 8 is once you spin the wheel all the way around. One thing I should mention about the bullet drop compensation is that while the M16A1 is in yards, the A2 and the detachable carry handle are both in meters. This is a change that the military did later on, so we should note it. Let's talk about apertures too. The A2 has a large aperture and a smaller aperture. So likely what this is going to mean is that in close distances or at night, you would use the large aperture because it's easier to see, but if you need to make a more precise hit out to range, you just flip that down and you have the shorter aperture. Now, with the A1, part of the aperture was bullet drop compensation. With this one, the apertures are zeroed the same way. So this has nothing to do with bullet drop compensation. These two holes are in the same place. It's just this one is bigger, this one's smaller. Real quick, talking about A2 sights. I said, as I had always heard, that the small aperture and the large aperture were zeroed to the same distance. However, I was digging online last night and found some other resources saying other things. They were saying that there's about a 2.5 MOA downward shift with the larger aperture, and what that will lead to is about 2.5 inches lower at 100 yards, which is to compensate for zeroing with the smaller aperture at 25 and 300 meters, and the larger aperture then you could use within that 300 meter range and be closer to being on target. In other words, what we would call a battle sight zero. Now, I don't want to say definitively where I stand on that, because I'm not quite sure personally. I'm seeing conflicting data on different things. However, if you would like to see a video testing that, let me know. Or if you have any information like a data sheet or something like that that the military produced on these rifles that you could show me, I would love to see that as well. All right, with that out of the way, let's get back to the video. Well, the A2 is a little bit more complicated, and there is a little bit more to screw up. I do think those extra controls are nice, and it's a lot easier to adjust to this rear sight. One of the biggest advantages about the A1s and the A2s in the modern day, since we've moved to flat tops, is that they look cool. And I know that you might think that that's not a big deal, but it is something, and it's one of the reasons why I got these two rifles. These are range guns, they aren't necessarily defense guns, although they could be pressed into that. But I like these because they are cool. If you like movies, you'll see this in just about any Vietnam War movie, as well as you'll see the A1 uppers in movies like Heat. However, with the A2 upper, you'll see that in movies like Black Hawk Down, and really anything to come out of the early days of the global war on terror. Also, since these are fixed to the gun, they are a little bit more solidly built, and so they're a lot less likely to break in that sense, and they're stupid proof. You can't take this off of the gun, it's attached to the gun, so you can't lose it. Now let's talk about the detachable carry handle. The biggest advantage of this is that you are not married to it. If you have an A1 upper or an A2 upper, you can't really change that, but with this, you can put it on or take it off. So if you want to see if you want a carry handle, you can buy one of these, attach it to your flat top, and then if you wanted to, you could buy one of these in the future, or you could just stick with this. Now we also need to talk about snag points and fiddly bits. With the A2, we did have the addition of this knob right here, and we have that knob on the A4, or the detachable carry handle as well. The detachable carry handle in design is basically the exact same thing as the A2, but with some minor differences. One of them being these two knobs right here, and these two knobs are snag points. So if you're going to have this gun in something like a bag, this is something that could get caught as you're pulling it out. Whereas with the A2 right here, if I was to remove this extended latch, it would be pretty slick on both sides. It's the same thing where you turn this knob to adjust your windage, and then you can flip this up for a small or large aperture. One other change is that whereas with the other one it was 300 and 800 meters, this one is 300 and 600. So it's the same thing, you turn it around all the way, and then eventually you get to the 6. However, somebody modified this one, and it does not go all the way to 6. If you zero it with 300 meters here, you can set it back, I believe, 2 clicks to get to 200 meters, and then 4 clicks to get to 100 meters. It's a pretty simple modification. I don't know exactly how to do it, and that's not what this video is about, but you will see some carry handles, some A2 or detachable carry handles that have that modification. Also, you'll notice that the slot here for the actual carrying part of the carry handle is quite a bit smaller. So I can get my full finger in here. I have kind of big hands, and it's hard to do that with this. It's not quite as comfortable. So the biggest advantage of the detachable carry handle is that it's detachable. If you want to, you can put it on anything, and you can replace it if you don't like it. Whereas with these, you're stuck with it. In my opinion, this isn't as good as backup iron sights if you're going to have like a red dot on your flat top. And the reason for that is because you can't have it attached at the same time as your red dot unless you use another attachment method like we're about to talk about. Now, let's talk about mounting other stuff to these, because that is an option. There are a number of different methods for doing that I would like to show you. The first is something like this. It's just a rail where this unscrews. Now, every one of these has a hole in the upper right there. I'm going to use the detachable one just because it's easier to carry, but it works on all of them. So there's a screw right there. You can put it through, and then you thread this knob back on. This is just a Picatinny rail that rides on top, but we also have what's called a gooseneck mount. The gooseneck mount was made for a number of different optics, and each one has a slightly different shape. But this one's pretty universal with different red dots and stuff like that. I didn't know this, but apparently the goosenecks don't work on the detachable carry handles. There we go. That's how that's supposed to work. So you just slide the gooseneck on right there, and then you can attach a red dot out here. You don't really have that many optic choices because with something like a scope, you will need to worry about eye relief. With a red dot, where that's not a problem, you can attach it out here and that's not an issue. And since it's attached to the receiver, which is attached to the barrel, you won't lose your zero. Also, a number of scopes and red dots have a direct attachment method. So if I remove these two screws on the bottom of this primary arms 2.5 prism, I can attach one of these screws directly to the carry handle. And I even have that little viewing hole. In fact, every single one of these options has a viewing hole in it. And that viewing hole makes it so that you can still see the sights through the gun, so you can still use your iron sights. So I guess if you wanted to, you could use a detachable carry handle and then one of these slots in order to get both a optic and a carry handle on the same gun. However, in my opinion, you do lose something there. And first, I mean, that's just aesthetic. However, the second thing is, one of the advantages of these fixed carry handles is that they are directly attached to the gun, so they can't be as easily lost or broken. And if you are attaching an optic to a converter, attaching that to a carry handle, and then attaching that to the gun, you have a lot of stuff there that can get lost or bumped and lose zero, or just have other issues with it. So which is best? Well, ultimately, that's up to you. Both of these are probably going to be more in line for people who are building clone guns or something of the like, in which case they'll want whichever one they can get. The biggest reason I would go for a detachable carry handle instead of an A2 or an A1 is ease and availability. And also it just gives you a lot more options. So A1 and A2 uppers you can only find with A1 or A2 uppers. There are a few exceptions to that, but generally that is the case. Whereas you can put one of these on virtually any AR-15 upper, and you can have a carry handle on it if that's what you want. Also, these and these are somewhat highly sought after by cloners and those kinds of things, whereas with these, you can just find them anywhere. If you think there's an advantage or disadvantage that I missed between A1, A2, and detachable carry handle uppers, I'd love to hear about that in the comments below, so let me know down there. Now, I am going to shoot this gun even though it says restricted for law enforcement and government use only, but I lived on.
Which proves it's hard to get the best of a man named John.